All right, everyone, good evening. We're going to get started. So this is our meeting. I want to start off by thanking everyone for joining this call to talk about where we are with the rehabilitation of Potomac Interceptor between manhole 31 and manhole 30. Before we get started, I do want to recognize Supervisor Bierman and Board Member Harrington to see if they have any words or comments that they want to provide at the top of the meeting before we get started.
Hi, everyone. Just a brief comment. My wife and I had a little bit of a snafu on children's pickup tonight, so I will be on the call from my office until about 5:50. Then I'll be taking it from my phone while I go pick up my kids from daycare. I'll still be on the call if it goes that long, and my Chief of Staff, Ben Wiles, will be here the whole time. I apologize. We just got our signals crossed, but luckily I have one of these. So thank you. I look forward to an update. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Bierman. Board Member Harrington, would you like to say anything or would you want to just get started?
No, I think let's dive in. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Zach, if you can take us to the next slide. Okay, so our agenda for this meeting is to cover the following: the objective, the project overview, the construction on the project where we are, emergency response efforts, odor abatement strategies, our schedule as it is now, and then of course followed by a Q&A session. And this meeting is also being recorded. I should say that up front as well. All right, next slide, Sam. All right, meeting objective to provide project update since we last met in February 2024 and to apprise the community of forthcoming construction activities. So without further ado, Zach, if you can take it over and take us into the meat of the presentation.
Sure, thanks, Emmanuel. So for those who don't know me, I'm Zach Pistilli. I'm the project manager for Ullman Schutte Construction. We're the design builder on the Manhole 31 project, delivering that along with several other stakeholders. So we are the design builder. So I'm going to take you through some of the construction efforts to date, as Emmanuel said. I kind of always start with the project overview, kind of revisited if you've been in these meetings before. This slide hasn't changed much. The new installation is really consisting of 3 large diameter concrete junction chambers. They're up here on the top side. It's like a plan view, looking bird's eye view down from the top, and then kind of a section view cut through the piping. And you can see the pipeline is pretty deep. It's about anywhere between 25 to 65 foot deep, and it goes progressively deeper as the gravity sewer line goes further down. If gravity flow moves from left to right on the screen here, and then the junction chambers are oddly shaped, but 2 rectangles on both ends and then a circle in the middle. And then the dark piping, the dark lines are the piping for the new infrastructure. And you can kind of see some of the piping in between this far left structure and the far right structure. That's the existing Potomac Interceptor, all through conveyance through this existing manhole 31. I'm sure the community is very familiar with, right near the Potomac Heritage Trail. So in effect, we build 3 new structures and the interconnecting piping, 78-inch diameter on the left-hand side, 66-inch diameter on the right-hand side. And once that's constructed, we convert the flow by way of removing sections of the piping inside of our constructed chambers. And that allows the flow to go into our new pipe and effectively being able to convey the flow around the deteriorated section of the Potomac Interceptor near Site 31. And then once that flow is converted, we will be abandoning in place the existing Potomac Interceptor. So that's the project revisited in a nutshell. Some of the completed activities to get us from the very beginning to where we are now. We obviously had some site clearing and security fence back in early 2020 or mid 2022, followed by the trail relocation and the community footpath that services the River Park Lane all the way down to the Potomac Heritage Trail. We've had some deep excavations clearly to install these structures. The first of which is this slip line structure, which is purposefully on top of the Potomac Interceptor and then installing a pipeline inside the Potomac Interceptor That way it stabilizes that deteriorating pipe and allows for future construction to facilitate the rest of our project. Secondarily, we had the next deep structure was this manhole 31, was representing the far left structure that I showed you in that bird's eye view. And you can see this pipe is the Potomac Interceptor. It's conveying flow actively. And we dug under the structure and then built a containment around it. This is a photo, two photos showing the actual slip line, really pushing a pipe inside of a deteriorated pipe. So now this pipe, the steel section is in place, stabilizing that Potomac Interceptor at our project site. Here's the manhole 31.5 construction. Again, that pipe in the top is still conveying the flow, and the bottom is showing the concrete structure. Manhole 31 is that circular structure that was in the middle of our screen. This shows a lot of the reinforcing steel and the concrete formwork. That structure has been completed as it stands right now. And then additionally, we have the interconnecting piping, the 66-inch that connects manhole 31.5 over to manhole 31. And those efforts are in progress, completed to date. So we have the activities we're working on currently. It's a nice aerial shot. Slightly a few months old. We do have the construction of manhole 31 complete. So what we're working on right now is the final structure. We call it manhole 30.59, excuse me, down in this far section where my cursor is, where this excavator is sitting. And then we also have the interconnecting piping, the 78-inch fiberglass pipe between manhole 31 and manhole 3059. Following the completion of that, we'll be converting the flow for about a 2 to 3 week period, and then coming up with backfill and really moving on to site restoration. So that's our planned activities, flow conversion and site restoration up in the future. So getting back to the planned features of work, when we do our site restoration, it consists of a few different things. The first is going to be our commitment to restore the Potomac Heritage Trail to existing conditions. And that's really both a temporary trail that will be removed, that is routed around our project site. Many of those who use that trail are familiar with it. It is representing the top area up here. The yellow is the existing Potomac Heritage Trail, and that will be placed back into service. Following that, we'll be restoring that towpath, removing it and kind of regrassing as needed. And that will allow the community to still use that gravel access path that everyone was using prior to the construction site. Part of the reforestation, we've developed a reforestation plan that is in lockstep with the Fairfax County Public Facilities Manual and also Nova Parks. So that's really going to consist of 200 plantings with 1.5-inch diameter trees. They're really going to be equally distributed for canopy coverage, and then additional seedlings for additional canopy as they kind of grow up. So everything you see inside of the green here, that's our target area for reforestation. Part of the project also, we've committed to do some paving restoration. The paving restoration is going to take place on the private section of River Park Lane, terminating at the entrance to the project site in that gravel path, coming up River Park Lane, bearing right along that dog leg bend, and then out to that cul-de-sac that begins the private road. So that'll be a pavement restoration. We're still in works about the full depth of pavement repair. I think we have some samplings done, getting some data about what's the total depth of asphalt, but in kind, that's our commitment to replace that paving into the same depth as existing. So back to kind of our emergency response. I'm sure many are curious in the call. A lot of these slides are really from our presentation we delivered back in February of this year, but I do want to revisit it as we've kind of concluded that emergency response effort. So we did discover a sinkhole on the project site, allocated here in red, that observed void. And after investigation, it was determined that it was the pipeline coming from left to right on the screen, which is from Fairfax County / Loudoun, right before it entered into manhole 31 existing. So this was a section of the pipe, again, to be abandoned in place. It was deteriorated. It was really the reason for this project is to take this existing pipeline out of service. So that's where we observed on February 12th. Here's a photo showing it as we came into the project site. It's about a 3-foot diameter sinkhole. It obviously grew over time due to rainfall and the flow conditions underneath. That's about 25 to 30 foot deep, where the Potomac Interceptor is actually conveying the sewage. So luckily for us, we did identify this as a project risk early on in the design phase, and we were able to establish an emergency response plan and also a subcontractor that would be on call in the event that an emergency like this happened. So our first step was to call that bypass subcontractor, and they effectively mobilized to the project site within 24 hours, and they dropped 5 bypass pumps and 1 extra in case of maintenance or pump failure for one of the in-duty pumps. Also the discharge piping and suction piping. This is a photo here of the discharge pipe out to the existing manhole 31. And you'll note that to convey the flow into that manhole 31, we had to remove the lid. And that allowed our piping to discharge through that structure. While the bypass pumping was conveying the flow for about a 2 to 2.5 month period, we designed and constructed a temporary sewage line from where the bypass pumps were pulling the sewage and then to manhole 31 where it was discharging. And this is a 52-inch steel piping, excuse me, steel pipe section. It was about 140 foot in total length. So we developed that, installed it, and as it stands now, this pipeline is actually conveying the flow between those two structures, and we're off bypass pumping at this point, which is great news. So once we got off bypass pumping, that really allowed us to kind of assess what the impacts to the project and the Potomac Interceptor were as a result of that sinkhole. A lot of debris and soil fell into the Potomac Interceptor, and that caused a lot of accumulation and a little bit of flow restriction as we've come to find out. So this chart here, this is kind of just shows you on the top side here, planned, really just a legend, so to speak. So we have our water height in blue, and this is not project specific, and debris height in red. And as we performed our scan back in, I want to say March of 2024, we observed really 2 things. Number one, the flow was the water height was increasing. This is right near our project site as it exits, and then it would decrease. So we had some bit of a restriction, and we found out that was due to a debris height that was totaling about at the peak about 38 inches or so right at our project site. So with that, it represents the accumulated soil, debris, sediment that fell into the Potomac Interceptor. So then our efforts shifted into removing that sediment so we can get back to normal flow conditions. So we did about 4 months of heavy, large diameter sewer cleaning, which is really, there's no way to shut off the Potomac Interceptor. So we had large equipment, we had vac trucks, we had a lot of activities to remove this sediment in a deep excavation while the active flow conditions are really happening through and around the site. Excuse me. So after about 4 months, we got it to a really effective area. The flow was able to decrease down to about 20 inches in the pipe, and then you can see that the debris height in red is between 8 and 10 inches on average. So hasn't removed it entirely, but the intent was we remove it such that the flow conditions get back to that normal characteristic condition. So this is a great success. Throughout this emergency response, there's a lot of words on this slide, but just an overview. We had the collapse there in February. We began a bypass pumping system that allowed us from from February to May to construct the temporary sewer and then convey that flow in lieu of bypass pumping. And then come around May to August, that was our 4 months of heavy cleaning. And you can see the project flows. We had to contend with about 95 million gallons a day. So it was not the easiest of cleaning, but we did have a really effective result. So, and then in early September, we installed, we called it a bulkhead. It really is kind a concrete encapsulation of the existing, excuse me, the existing slip line. And that mitigated the backflow to our project site. So prior to that, we were getting a lot of backflow from the tunnel, and because of the debris and the flow restriction. So when we established that bulkhead, we were kind of in the dry, so to speak, and we could actually begin removing the accumulated organic solids from the project site. Additionally, we installed an odor masking system to contend a secondary odor masking system to contend with some of those on-site odors. And then also the removal of our bypass piping, specifically the discharge pipes that went into manhole 31 that was just open to the environment. So upon removal of those, we could actually reestablish the lid and really start to tamp down some of those on-site odors. And then as of end of October, we were able to remove all of the remaining debris and stone inside of our excavation that was contaminated with the sewage. So this is a shot from, excuse me, downstream at manhole 3059, looking up in the upstream direction. And you can see this is a deep excavation. Excuse me. You can see it's a deep excavation, and this is the primary source of odor, was really the sedentary organic material that was backflowing to our project site prior to our installation of the bulkhead. And then the secondary source of the odor of our on-site was the existing manhole 31. As I mentioned, this is before construction. You can see a bricked up structure with a concrete cap. This was how we installed the bypass pumping discharge pipes, and you can see it's contained, but it's certainly not airtight. So there was a lot of escapage of odors through that system. And then when we were in the dry and got done the installation of, the removal of the solids, removal of stone, we were able to put this containment tarp on. That the lid is on the manhole now, and tarp over top of it. So, and I know that as we progress through the winter months here, I expect the odors to diminish even further. I think the cooler temperatures will certainly help us as opposed to the hot summer months. I think we have some odor fans that we've established here, and really you can see one is located on the left nearest the Potomac Heritage Trail relocation. That's shooting to our project site. And then the secondary fan is right near manhole 31, trying to tamp down the odors that may escape from that cover and tarp. So with that, as we've completed our emergency response, we'll be moving on to completion of our final structures, which should take us into the second quarter of 2025. That's not just the completion of the structure itself, but also the converting of flow and the backfilling. And then between the second quarter and third quarter of 2025, we'll be doing our site restoration and reforestation efforts. So with that, I'll pass it back to Emmanuel for some questions.
Thank you, Dan. So, anyone that are looking at any questions or any information in the chat or any concerns anyone has, we can address at this time.
Emmanuel, I don't see any questions in the chat.
Hi.
Mr. Bierman?
Yes. So my understanding from what I just heard.
Can you guys get back to the schedule for a minute?
Certainly. Just 1 second.
So who was that who just spoke?
So to get to the second quarter of 2025, you're working on permanent structures, which is the the junction boxes and piping?
Correct, yes. And that permanent structures, that's really the final completion of everything. So that would be not only the structure, the piping, that would be the backfill and the converting of flow.
So do we have any idea how much flow got into the groundwater area? It was open for 2.5 months. Is that the bottom line?
Yeah, we stopped the backflow, so to speak, around around that September timeframe. So it was it was probably 6 or 7 months, I'd say, in net totality.
Any idea on how much volume? Estimated on how much you get on a daily basis?
Well, I know we get up to 95 million gallons. That's kind of the highest. That's the highest level with storm and wet conditions. Now, a lot of that was still going in the Potomac Interceptor. So, and that really the tunnel itself. So downstream of our project site, we were getting some, I call it, backwater because of that elevated accumulated debris. So we wouldn't be getting anywhere near that. We're just kind of getting the leakage backwards after we stopped our bypass pumping.
So that 95 million gallons is per day?
Yeah, I think the average flow for the Potomac Interceptor is around the 40 to 50 if at our project site. But like I said, in wet weather conditions, 100-year storm events, it could be up to 95.
Okay. But we don't have any evidence that it went to Potomac, or we don't have any more data about traveling?
Hey,
Not
Zach,
not that
this is Salil. Wasn't there a hydrogeologist report that said that groundwater is actually entering the Potomac Interceptor as opposed to it leaving?
there was, Leo. So we distributed, I think, that report over, and it was talked about. And the last time we met in February, we had that hydrogeologist kind of walking us through some of the data. I think that data really consisted of flow going, based on the topography that the conditions would indicate flow is going into our project site rather from the Potomac and the and the groundwater rather than the other way around. But there hasn't been any additional information since that report.
Obviously, since you guys are removing the dirt that's been contaminated, then it's not going into the ground, right? It's not like the water from the Potomac is going into the system. You're talking about the pressure of the groundwater, what direction it would travel afterwards, right?
Correct. Yeah, that report indicated that the pressure of the groundwater would be into our site rather than the other way around. Any standing water on the ground would not be transmitted into the groundwater table.
So you took a fair amount of dirt off the site and replaced it with new dirt? I don't know where the dirt came from. I'm assuming it's not contaminated though.
Correct. Let me jump back here. Can see. So before the sinkhole developed and we had a lot of the soil and organic material accumulated, we were at the bottom of our excavation. So to get us back to where we need to build our final pipeline and final structure, we had to re-excavate that material out. So in essence, we just removed the accumulated soil that was as a result of the sinkhole.
Wasn't that one of the reasons why the smell was so bad this summer though? It was from the contaminated soil and that's why you remediated?
That's right. So in the sinkhole, and I don't have an accurate photo because there was that 3-foot diameter one I showed, but the sinkhole was really 30-foot wide by 80-foot long. So there was a lot of material that fell either in the Potomac Interceptor and into this excavation as a result of the sinkhole. And then you had organic material building up over top of that soil. So that was really the culprit.
Just curious, I don't want to hog all the time here, but so the trees, the 1.5-inch trees you're going to plant, I'm assuming those have sleeves around them, so they're not just deer fodder, right?
Yeah, I think that's the case. Yep. And we're still working, I think, on species with Nova Parks about, what trees is best for this area. But yes, they will be protected.
So what caused the sinkhole? The pipe failed?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Yeah, the pipe failed. Pull back. Yeah, directly in on this red area. And not to get too detailed, but this is a 54-inch existing pipe, and you can see this is a slope of 7%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but in wastewater conveyance, that's a very heavy slope. You usually want to have that very close to, certainly under 1%. So that resulted in a lot of increased velocity of this flow in here, and you had a bunch of so you have an erosion problem because there's high velocity flows in a gravity line, but also there was corrosion because it developed a lot of off-gassing as a result of that high velocity. So that developed really a weak point to the top of the pipe, the crown of the pipe, and time over time, it just happened to decay to a point where sinkhole developed and dirt would fall into the pipe.
So you said you're putting a steel pipe in. What's the lifetime of that pipe?
So
With the
the steel,
corrosion and the flow and everything.
yeah, the steel pipe we've placed from. Can you guys see my cursor? Let me ask that.
Yep.
Okay, so the steel pipe, this is existing manhole 31. We knew since this is the common effluent pipe, it handles the flow from both Maryland and Virginia, or Loudoun County and Fairfax. So you have all the effluent in this pipe. This, based on some of the geotechnical borings we did in pre-construction and design development, indicated that this pipe section that was to be abandoned in place was really not in great shape. So the slip line, the steel pipe, was just to get us to, 2 to 3 years to get us through the construction phase. When the new structures are built, all of the piping in between the gray lines and where my cursor is, that all gets abandoned. So at the end of our project, the steel pipe will be pumped with concrete and it'll be filled up and won't have any flow in it.
So what's the life expectancy of the new pipes?
The new pipes, they're fiberglass, spiral wound fiberglass. You can kind of see they're a little bit different looking. Sorry, jumping back and forth.
So Zach, to answer the question, I think it's 75 to 100 years, I believe, for the pipe.
Yeah, I think that's 75 years, Salil, for this specific pipe. It's very resistant to corrosion and off-gassing.
Plus the design of the system, sorry for interrupting. The design of the system is with a drop so that it does not have the same velocities. Might want to explain that so we don't repeat the same problem.
Yeah.
And at what point will there be like no odor down there when you walk through?
So I think we're successful in deterring some of the odors. I do
Right.
understand that there was a significant amount of odor for a period of time that we were trying our best to get that tamped down as quick as possible. But really, that the cleaning was driving our project, driving that, and there wasn't quite a known deliverable for that. We just were pulling out little bit by little bit, and it did drag on. But I would think as we progressed through the flow conversion, we built our final structure through these winter months. I would expect there to be even less than there is now. And I know we've certainly made some strides. I feel like we were getting a fair bit of odor complaints near the project site and even a little bit downstream. But from my understanding, I haven't seen anything come through in about 3 to 4 weeks. I'm hopeful that our strategies have been somewhat effective in lowering those. Now, at the end of our project, looking well beyond quarter 2 of 2025, the new structures will be connected to the DC water odor control facility. So following the completion of our construction, I think it'll be much improved.
So did the pipe fail on its own or because of you guys working near it, or what happened there?
We think it was just decaying and corroding over time. So our plan, we did not park any equipment on top of it. We weren't surcharging it, and we weren't excavating on and around that section of pipe. You can see where the pipe failed over here is a little bit far away. It's about 40, 50 foot away from where we're actually excavating for our structures. So we think it was just over time. In reality, it's a kind of good thing it failed as the project was ongoing. That allowed us to respond very quickly. So if it happened 3 years ago, and it might have been a little bit different story with how quickly the response could have been.
Zach, the whole impetus for the project is because we were concerned about the high velocities and corrosion in that pipe to begin with.
Right. But so have you done a further study as to the condition of the rest of the existing pipe? I mean, we're gonna have the same problem in 5 years somewhere else?
We have looked at the rest of the pipe, and our current budget has some large capital programs to start rehabbing the Potomac Interceptor. That goes to our board for approval first part of next year. But yes,
Where's the
there's
next
ongoing. Sorry. go
area
ahead.
of interest? Where's the next area? Is it near us?
Don't have that handy, but we could certainly supply that back.
That'd be great.
Emmanuel, can you make a note of that, please?
And Salil, it's my understanding this section of Potomac Interceptor at this 7% slope. That's unique, right? There's, to my understanding, there's not really any other areas along the Potomac Interceptor that have that steep high velocity flow.
No, but there's other areas that need rehab, and we have plans underway to address those, and we should make those available to the community. Not in this area.
I know that this has been a topic for over 20 years, right? I mean, I think deterioration, but it was a problem of how to solve the problem, as I understand it. So, we have pictures from 20 years ago, people standing inside of corroded pipe, so.
Yeah, that certainly predated my involvement in the project, but I do know that it's a challenging site in that there's no intermittent manholes for a mile downstream and about a half mile to 3/4 mile upstream. So bypass pumping and rehabilitation while flow is active was very, very challenging. And this kind of in the dry approach where we're building adjacent construction that came about through that design build delivery model, was on board the contractor and designer and worked, with DC Water to develop strategies.
Yeah, I mean, we're glad that you're almost done. It's obviously taking a lot longer than anybody thought it would. But glad that it's wrapping up. And yeah, I think we're just trying to get our heads around. We're on the river near the site. We can look out our window and see you guys. It's quiet over there tonight, but see you almost every night. And then there's land I know between us, and he's trying to get an idea of how much he needs to worry about contaminated well water. So that's really where most of the questions, projects take longer. It's just ongoing issues that we're trying to figure out. If you could help us figure that out, that would be very useful.
Yes, Salil, do you want to talk on the well water?
We need a hydrogeologist in there. I don't want to go into an area where I'm not specialized right now. But we'll certainly bring it up with them.
Yeah, we'd love somebody to get back to us on that because it's it's not a resolved issue as far as we're aware. Nobody is really sure where the backflow traveled. So Fairfax County told us that it could come up 1,000 years from now. So it's really something we'd like to get our heads around.
Certainly. Would it be helpful if you could get the name from the person from Fairfax that said that, so we could also touch base with them to see what they know that we may not have found out?
Chris Harrington, can you speak to that? This is Jimmy Bierman. Look, yeah, we need to continue to monitor the situation with wells, make sure that there's a plan going forward so that people can have confidence in their well water. I know we had monitoring going on. That obviously, whatever that looks like, needs to continue, and we need the support of DC Water throughout that process. We also need to continue providing that support at the county level. I see Chris, maybe he just seems to have left the meeting, so I was hoping he could speak to that. But also, I wanted to just understand, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to jump from my computer to my phone in a second, so it'll be a little harder to talk. But I just want to be clear. In your view, the cleanup of the sinkhole is, knock on wood, roughly complete. You are at the point of really trying to connect to the new pipe and abandon the old pipe, but the sinkhole cleanup is more or less done. And your position, which hopefully is borne out as true, is that with the new pipe, all this, and time, and having completed all this, that the odors and everything will be mitigated, and especially, and it sounds like to me that the new pipe is, couldn't get here soon enough, and that's part of the problem here. We need this new pipe to be hooked up and be moving forward. Is that all correct? And what is the actual, again, you'd have to go back to the slide. I think you said third quarter of 2025 that the new pipe should be there. So let's be honest, that means the end of 2025. Is that right? Or is that, I'm sorry, I just need you to go back to that slide.
Yep, I'm getting there.
Sorry.
But this is the same slide that was December, the last time we talked in February. So, I mean, this is another.
Yeah, how does the sinkhole affect that estimated project schedule? Can we still count on this thing basically being done by third quarter of 2025, or do we need to be thinking further out?
With the current knowns, I think that's an effective target. To get back to your first point, we've completed the sinkhole remediation. So at the sink, we're conveying flow. We're not on bypass pumping. We've removed all the sediment, debris, and solids from our project site. So we're back to where we were before the sinkhole happened in February. So obviously the long pole in the tent there with what was driving this project delay, number one, is we had to construct a temporary pipe. I had to do that very quickly under bypass pumping conditions, and so that was 2 to 3 months for that work. And then we had to do the cleaning of the pipe, and that was with that up to 95 million gallons of flow, in a deep excavation. So that took about 4 months, and once that flow line settled, that allowed us to do our cleanup of our excavation. So
you said that you haven't gotten complaints in 3 to 4 weeks about odor, but it's clear that people still are smelling odors. So why are they still smelling odors? And will ultimately the only antidote to the odor be everything being good and buried and done? Is that right? Or is there some other reason why they're still smelling odors? Yeah, I think people just want to get back to a sense of normalcy. So I'm trying to level set when that'll be and how.
Yeah, I think when we start tracking for the completion of the project, that throughout that time, there might be some air and odors. I think we're making really good strides. Now there are other things we could potentially do, and we could bring to the table and
Then you
work.
need to do them. If there are other things that you could potentially do, then you need to do them. I'm just going to be very clear on that one. These folks have been dealt with odors now for what, 9 months? So if there are other things that you can do, you need to do them. But I mean, look, I ultimately, and I know I sound a bit gruff, and I apologize for that. Ultimately, I want to say that if we can get through this, it's very obvious that you all were fixing a problem that needed to be fixed about when the problem happened, and there could be a positive story of some sort on the end of this when it's all said and done. But if there are things that you could be doing, then you need to be doing them, because this has been awful for this community for 8-9 months. So and you know, I'll toast to you when it's all done and we've moved on and we have a new pipe that's going to last 75 years. And I truly believe that that will be the case. But we need to do everything possible before then to mitigate the odors as soon as possible.
Yeah, this I appreciate your help on that. This project's been going on for 20 years before, but you guys have been working actively for 4 years. It's not 9 months. It's been a while, and it's cold out, so the windows are closed, and it's less of an issue, I think, generally. But my biggest concern are two. One, the groundwater contamination. I'd like to figure out, because of the spill, what's the long-term impact on that. And two, I know you're fixing the roads. Can you look at the shoulders? Those dump trucks are really bad on the shoulders of the road as well, that you're not looking at, and those are starting to cave.
So I'll defer to DC Water about the well sampling. From the contracting standpoint, we certainly can address the shoulders and off to the left and right of the road.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, we're going to have to have a hydrogeologist provide an opinion. I'm not sure anybody on this call on the DC Water side is qualified to do that right now.
Well, then you need to hire someone who is. I mean, seriously, guys, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. I mean, you can't come into these community meetings and not be able to answer questions. You just can't do it. And if you don't have somebody who's qualified to do it, you need to hire someone who is. I mean, this is just a bit of absurdity here. So, look, now I will apologize for something. I said that I was going to have to jump to my phone at about 5:50 so I could pick up my kids from school. So I'll still be listening in. But you know, when people are asking the exact types of questions you would expect to be asked, you need to have somebody here who's ready to answer those questions. Period. It's just not acceptable to not. Now, again, you know, and I don't mean to, and I'm sorry, ma'am, when I said, you know, 9 months, I meant since the spill. I recognize that this project's been going on for 4 years, and so I apologize for saying it that way. But you know, you need to hire someone who knows this stuff if you don't know it, and frankly, you should know it. With that, I am going to be transferring to my phone, so I'll still be listening in. My chief of staff is still on the line. And if anybody has additional questions for my office, you know, please do reach out. And as I said, I will continue listening in just on my phone. Thank you.
Mr. Harrington, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to chime in again, based on all the information that we had at the time that the well sampling was done, there wasn't contamination of the wells as a result of the sinkhole issue and the emergency response after it from this project. And so I think if there are ongoing questions for Fairfax County residents about the quality of your groundwater, Peter Sheehan was here on the call earlier at least, please reach out to the Fairfax County Health Department. Those are the folks that you need to be communicating with first in terms of understanding whether or not there is any ongoing issues or what the what you could be doing to take immediate action to be protective of your family if you're concerned about it.
I'd just like a written statement as to what you think happened to the flow. If it's not, we just had our well tested, it's not in the well. It's some ongoing liability issues for people that are trying to sell their land. I think we need to rely on an expert on your side with a written report.
But again, I think there was some confusion in the conversation potentially earlier about the groundwater was coming into the site of the, well, not
No, the
escaping
flow,
somewhere else, right? So
there
water
was
still
flow coming out of the system into the ground around it. So
When they tested the wells,
How do
in
you know
Kennedy,
that?
there were several wells that had E. coli.
Yes,
But
but the
it's,
pattern of detections didn't show any relationship back to either the topographic relief or any patterns that could be elucidated from the history of the well drilling reports. If this is sewage, right? If sewage had gotten into your drinking water system, into your water wells, into the groundwater system, we would be consistently seeing high levels of coliform bacteria. We did not,
that
right? And
doesn't
so we
mean that
didn't
it's not
see.
in the ground and will enter the groundwater system within the next.
There were also some of those samples were not done correctly in the sense that they were likely to be contaminated by space from the fixtures themselves. And
Can we
so
get a
if you
written
saw
report,
hits,
please, from your office, we'd just appreciate that.
so I don't own any of this data. And I shared at the last public meeting where we presented some of this information that was Fairfax County shared information. And so that presentation is the statement, and I'm happy to share that again.
Fairfax County is not at fault for the situation, so I don't really think it's their issue.
Understood.
No, and this is Ben. I mean, I think as a follow-up to the concern, I mean, can someone look into this and report back on what information you're able to share, and if there's something more that needs to be done in terms of work that that you will get back to the community on this question?
But yeah, that question is noted. It's the main one.
Thank you, Manuel.
Are there any other questions or concerns?
Yeah, we'd really like to see the plans for pipeline remediation as soon as possible
I mean, it's for the other areas.
for the other areas.
We would like to say that you guys have handled this really well overall. It's just a long-term liability issue. We need to, we're not complaining about another 9 months. It's not that. It's a hard job, and you're doing it. You're doing it well. We just need to, figure out the risks.
I appreciate that. I think we're also looking to get done the project. I know you guys want it done. We want to be done as well. So I think we're all pulling on the same end of the rope.
All right. If there's anything else, I don't see anything and check anything. Any other questions or concerns? Looks like we're in the last, we're almost at time. Don't see anything.
Nope, I don't see anything.
Can you guys email the slides around, please?
Absolutely.
Thanks for the update. I hate to hog the questions.
Well,
You're
welcome.
fine, Peggy. And if you don't
Sad
have any
we all know
questions
each
right
other.
now, I know. But if you don't have any questions right now, please, and we do have questions later on, please feel free to email us those questions and we'll get the answers for you.
We remember the ones that we did receive, and if there is nothing else, we're going to conclude this meeting. We do thank you for joining us, and I still want to mention, if you have any questions beyond the end of this meeting, please feel free to email Tijuana and or myself, and we will get you a response to it. With a perfect opinion, with your response. Well, with that, I'm going to conclude this meeting. Thank you all for joining again. And just stay tuned for more updates and responses to questions received. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.